Personal finance, and by extension, personal finance content, is here to help you to level up. Tips like save 3 to 6 months of your income or pay yourself first. All of that stuff became commonplace advice, common sense, but now a lot of that has become outdated. So what is exactly going on here, and why do I think that personal finance is now broken in 2025 and perhaps even broken over the last 10 years or so? Let's go ahead and break it down. Something is wrong here, and it's been wrong for quite a while. Now, you can point to some of the saving stats and what's happening in 2025, but I would argue it is a bigger piece. Now, the biggest part of this, and I would argue there are 3 pieces that we'll talk about today, is something that came across my news feed, and it is starting with college. So what is going on here? Let's go ahead and break it down. I'll start off by circling around 3 primary pillars to keep this video manageable, okay? But we'll start with college. Now, initially, we're talking maybe from the mid-1980s to today. While college has never been perfect, the idea was you go to college, you're trading 4 years of your life for what was supposed to be a higher income. That was the point. Now, you could have gone to high school, gone to trade school, and gotten a pretty good to decent living, but you are trading that 4 years so you can get a whole lot more. I think the stat, I'll put the stat here to be exact, but by going to college, you were supposed to make X% more than someone who just graduated college. That was a trade-off. But now things have changed for people going to college. As we know, student loans have changed the equation on the return on investments when it comes to college. And as you know, student loans have changed the return on investments as college has become more expensive. It wasn't, hey, just go to college, to any college and any degree and you could get more money. It started to become, hey, actually you need to go to college and get something that's actually going to pay you. And instead of just going to college in general, it started to be, hey, don't get an English degree, don't get a history degree, go for technology, go for business, go for accounting, something you can get a job in. And as we got closer to the 2010s, the 2020s, it started to say, hey, go and learn coding, go and learn tech. That's where you need to go so you can graduate and get immediately 6 figures, pay off those loans if you have them at all, and boom, you're going to be set for life. Well, until now. You have a lot of tech kids who just graduated, may or may not have debt, and now they're working at Chipotle. We need to rethink how we go about the entire college experience because that trade-off may not be true anymore. And just a few years ago, it was true. It was absolutely true just a few years ago. The video I did with Wired when they asked me, was college worth it, was it a scam, so on and so forth, at that point in time, yeah, college was still worth it. It was still worth the investment at that point in time. But now, especially with AI and how jobs are shaking out, I don't know how that's going to change. Should everybody go to trade school? There's a good percentage of people who should, because we do have shortages of tradespeople that we do absolutely need. And a lot of them get paid a lot of good money. But also, there are people that we do need in college too, including teachers. We do have a shortage of doctors too. So we need a lot of people in a lot of different spaces. So it's not necessarily putting both of those parties against each other, but the financial calculation for both is valid here. So that's one. The advice around what you need to go to school for and what to major for might not be what it used to be. But also, let's talk about home ownership. I'm not going to go into the whole renting versus owning thing. I have proven my case many a time before. However, a lot of the stuff that I've been talking about when it comes to millennials and Gen Z versus previous generations, it used to cost 2 times the median salary to buy a home. We used to have starter homes. Well, the thing is, in the 1940s, about 40% of homes were starter homes. And the concept was at that time, you get you a little starter home, right, to start, establish, continue growing and saving, and you move your way up into eventually your dream home, your retirement home, so on and so forth. That's not a thing anymore. assuming you can even afford a home, most people now are even getting their first home in their 30s as opposed to their early 20s like they used to. Today, you're talking about 5 times your median salary just to get the median home, the basic regular home across America. Now, there are some places in America where it is far more affordable for whatever reason. In Philly, it is way cheaper to buy a house in Philly, which is a major American city, than New York, which obviously is New York City, right? Or LA, which is way more expensive, right? So there are some pockets, especially in my hometown, like Tulsa, Oklahoma, and other places. But still, on average, it is way more expensive than what it used to be in the 1980s, where, again, that was just 2 times your salary. But even today, starter homes don't exist like they used to. The home that I have now, by definition, is not a starter home. I wouldn't call it a dream home either, but this is a well-established home. Everybody around us in our neighborhood, only one other family is around our age. Everybody else here is retired. They've already established. They've already got money. They're fine, right? Us, right? It's us and another family. We clawed and scraped, and we probably just gonna stay here because our interest rate was extremely low, and that's about it. You don't see a ton of other families, at least on this particular block, and that's just kind of how it is. Everybody else got in because they were much older. They had more assets, and they moved up from their starter homes from buying decades and decades ago. So how do you mitigate that if possible? Now, I have said that you can rent and invest the difference. That is an option. People want to agree and disagree with that, but again, that's a conversation for another day. You want to check out that video, you are more than welcome to do that here. Another option, and this depends on your family situation, is, and I'm more open to this now, especially for my own kids, you can decide to stay with family much longer and save that way. Why choose to move out early and have a rent and all that kind of stuff when you can just save that money on your behalf to have a down payment? Multi-generational living and living arrangements were far more common in the early 1900s. I'm talking, 1900s up to about 1940 or so. Not everybody always had their own house. It wasn't until after World War II and the baby boom that we started building houses like that and everybody had their own house. Grandma used to always stay with everybody else. That was more common. I'm doing a lot more research on that and why everybody got to have their own house all the time. But just as a thought, right, it might make a lot more sense if you want to buy your own home. There are a lot of, I've had clients in the past that straight out of college, moved home with their parents, sometimes 3-4 years, paid off their student loans, saved enough to buy the house, and did that, right? And when you don't have rent and you're not paying $1,000, $1,500, $2,000 for rent, you can make a whole lot of positive damage by doing that. And as somebody who was their advisor and their coach at their time, I'm looking at their expenses like, ooh, you ain't got nothing but Netflix here. Right? You can do a whole lot of very good things, and that may make a lot of sense, especially if you have a time frame on that. And that can be a way to build generational wealth that makes more sense, because if you're paying rent, that's a lot less that you can use to invest, a lot less that you can do to save for a home if that's the route that you want to take. And obviously, I mentioned this earlier, to invest in everything else. And then something we had mentioned, job hopping. That is a tactic that is no longer working. And perhaps this is something that is returning back to something we used to have, right? Job loyalty was a thing, right? For my parents, especially, my dad and, my grandpa, they had pensions. That's just what you did. You worked somewhere for 20, sometimes 30 years. They would pay you a pension for as long as you lived. And they stayed at those places forever. Now, I think it's a little early in this economy to do that, but 63%, we've seen a 63% drop in job hopping so far this year, reported by the Washington Post. It used to be, especially in the early 2010s, where the advice was, do not stay loyal at your company. You need to be either asking for aggressive raises or taking your skills and moving to the next company. That's how I got my first 6-figure job. It's about every 2 years. I just kept hopping and hopping and hopping until I got to a spot where I was like, hey, I actually kind of like it here. And I just asked for a raise. And they gave it to me. Everything was fine. And then I got laid off. But I didn't get laid off because of the raise. I actually don't know why I got laid off. Questions for another day. But in either case, things were great for a lot of those job hopping people, and that was how millennials really moved up the ladder. And again, I had the advantage of seeing the finances of people, and I got to see receipts. Those who moved up, I really got to see them move up. People who make it 50 to 150 within 5 to 7 years. I've seen people who started off at making 75 and stayed at 75, only made 75, 76, 77, and just stayed completely flatlined because they stayed loyal to those companies. Now that has completely flipped. Now it has completely flipped. And the question is our advice changing with it? The content that you are watching on a daily basis, the content that you're reading on a daily basis, is it being updated? We had talked about, I did a whole video on Dave Ramsey and how he's saying don't contribute to your 401k. I've got a lot of critical content on Dave Ramsey and critical thoughts on Dave Ramsey in general. I think a lot of his stuff is kind of rooted in the early 1990s. It has not been updated at all. What about the stuff that we now know about the 2010s that no longer fits? A lot of, not all, but a lot of the FIRE content, financial independence, retire early, might not fit in an era where inflation is high and tariffs are high, where you would force everything into trying to retire early and live off very little. Well, now the costs are much higher. That may not work. A lot of people who were in the FIRE community in the very early 2010s have gone back to work because things have changed so very much. So, has that content changed for you, and does it fit for you? And do you have a place to have these ongoing conversations in a way that fits you? Is the real question. This is why sometimes you want to work with somebody where you can actually talk and it's just not a one-way conversation. But more importantly, that is the thing that I think is broken, because a lot of times we hold on to a specific era. Like, when I grew up, this was the music. When I grew up, this was the artist, and that was it, right? Like, for me, when I was growing up and really learned basketball, it was Kobe. I was a kid in the 90s. Like, at 7, yes, Michael Jordan was a thing, but I'd be lying to you if I told you I understood basketball at that age, right? So when I was, in my teens and really understanding, remembering basketball, that was Kobe. So that, to me, that's the greatest player, right? To me. But that's only because that's how old I was at that time, right? There's not, a statistical, whatever. Although I can make that case, but I'm not going to do that today. That's not the type of channel. But that is the thing, right? And sometimes we hold that financial advice in that same vein. Because you were in your early 20s, because that person helped you get out the mud at that time, you just take it and make that gospel forever. Has that person updated their thoughts, their views, their advice for where we are today? If not, that piece of content, that thinking might be broken. This is why on this channel, which is why you want to subscribe, is why I say, hey, one, I share like, hey, this stock didn't work. I update my portfolio. We talk about the stock every 6 months. We go over new stocks every month, right? To keep those things fresh. That's the whole point. I don't sit on stocks forever and ever and ever unless those stocks are good forever and ever and ever, right? But that's why you want to make those tweaks and adjustments to move and evolve as the economy does, right? So if it's not, then it might be broken for you, but you also have to move and evolve too. So those are the things that I absolutely wanted to bring up. Also, we do have a newsletter so that we can continuously have these conversations. There should be a link here. If not, it's in the bio too, that will be launching in early November. So we can have more of these long form thoughts about these types of things. So you sign up, totally free, but want to expand a bit more on these conversations and things like this. And we'll be talking a lot about this very soon. If you want to learn more about the stock market, the economy, and everything in between, you want to check out these videos right here.